Hello everyone, my name is David Esteem, and today I'll be presenting a workshop focused on gender as a component of diversity, specifically centering on non-binary individuals. This is Designing Schools Where All Identities Belong. This workshop is designed for educators working in modern classroom environments where student identity continues to evolve in ways that challenge traditional understandings of gender. As educators, we have a responsibility to create spaces where all students feel seen, respected, and supported. This presentation will focus on how we can better understand non-binary identities and begin to build more inclusive, equitable classroom environments that reflect the realities of the students we serve today. By the end of this workshop, participants will be able to recognize the unique challenges that non-binary students face in today's classrooms and understand how those challenges impact their sense of belonging and learning. More importantly, educators will be able to apply principles of universal design for learning to create more inclusive environments that proactively support diverse gender identities rather than reacting to issues as they arise. Participants will leave with practical strategies they can implement immediately, including ways to adjust classroom language, structure, and expectations so that all students feel seen, respected, and supported. Ultimately, the goal is to move beyond awareness and toward intentional action that promotes equity and inclusion in everyday classroom practice. When we talk about gender as a component of diversity, we are recognizing that gender is not limited to just male and female, but exists along a spectrum. In this workshop, I am specifically focusing on non-binary individuals, which refers to people whose gender identity does not fit strictly within the categories of male or female. This can include identities such as genderqueer, gender fluid, agender, or other identities that exist outside of the traditional binary framework. Non-binary individuals are part of the broader LGBTQ+ community, but it's important to understand that their experiences are unique and often misunderstood, especially in school settings. This group includes students who may express their gender in different ways through their appearance, pronouns, or how they navigate social spaces. By expanding our understanding of gender, we can begin to create classroom environments that are more inclusive and more responsive to all students, not just those who fit traditional expectations. When looking at current issues surrounding non-binary individuals in education, one of the biggest challenges is that many school systems are still built around a traditional gender binary. This shows up in everyday practice like attendance rosters, dress codes, restroom access, and even the language used in classrooms, which can unintentionally exclude or invalidate students who do not identify as male or female. As a result, non-binary students often experience misunderstanding, misgendering, or a lack of support, which can impact their sense of safety, belonging, and overall academic engagement. At the same time, there has been noticeable progress in recent years. More schools are beginning to adopt inclusive practices, such as allowing students to share their pronouns, updating forms to reflect diverse gender identities, and providing professional development focused on LGBTQ+ inclusion. However, there is still a clear gap between awareness and consistent implementation. Many educators want to be supportive but may lack the training or confidence to take meaningful action. This highlights the ongoing need for intentional design, continued education, and systemic changes that move beyond surface level inclusion and toward truly equitable learning environments for all students. Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, is all about designing learning environments from the start so they work for the widest range of learners rather than making adjustments after barriers appear. When we connect this to non-binary students, UDL helps us shift from reacting to individual needs to creating classrooms that are inclusive by design. For example, the principle of multiple means of engagement encourages us to create a learning environment where all students feel safe and valued. This can include normalizing the use of chosen names and pronouns and building classroom norms that respect identity and voice. Multiple means of representation reminds us to present information in ways that reflect diverse identities, such as including examples, texts, and perspectives that represent a range of gender experiences. Finally, multiple means of action and expression allows students to express themselves in ways that align with who they are, rather than forcing them into rigid expectations. By applying UDL principles, we are not singling out non-binary students, but instead removing barriers that might prevent them and others from fully participating. This approach supports equity by making inclusion a built-in part of learning environment rather than postscript. To create truly inclusive spaces for non-binary students, we have to be intentional about both the physical environment and the everyday practices within the classroom. From a physical standpoint, schools should provide access to gender-neutral restrooms and ensure that classroom layouts and shared spaces feel safe and accessible for all students. Even something as simple as how we design seating charts, group work, or classroom displays can either reinforce or challenge traditional gender norms. In addition, school forms, rosters, and digital systems should allow students to use their chosen names and reflect identities beyond the gender binary. At the same time, inclusion is shaped by daily actions and expectations. Educators should establish clear classroom norms that respect all identities, including the consistent use of students' chosen names and pronouns. Ongoing professional development is important so teachers feel confident understanding gender diversity and know how to respond when mistakes or misunderstandings happen. Creating inclusive spaces also means being proactive, not reactive, by building a classroom culture where respect and acceptance are expected from the start. For educators to be successful allies, they need to recognize that allyship is an ongoing process, not a one-time action. This includes listening to students, reflecting on personal assumptions, and being willing to adjust practices when something is not working. It also means advocating for students when systems fall short and addressing exclusion when it happens. Small, consistent actions like correcting language, checking in with students, or challenging biased behavior can make a significant difference. Ultimately, creating inclusive spaces means designing classrooms where non-binary students don't have to fight to belong because inclusion is already built into the environment. When we talk about real advocacy for non-binary students, Aiden Key is someone who is actually doing the work inside schools. He focuses on helping educators understand gender diversity in a way that's practical and actionable, not just theoretical. What stands out about his work is that he trains teachers, administrators, and even athletic programs on how to create environments where students feel safe being themselves. That includes things like respecting pronouns, rethinking gendered spaces, and making sure policies actually reflect student needs. From my perspective, what makes this powerful is that he's not just raising awareness, he's helping schools shift their mindset. He's showing educators that inclusion isn't about reacting when there's a problem, it's about designing environments where students don't have to fight to be recognized in the first place. AJ Hikes brings a different but equally important perspective to this work by focusing on intersectionality. They're known for leading the More Pride, More Color campaign, which challenged people to think deeper about who is actually being represented in inclusion efforts. What I take from their work is that supporting non-binary students isn't just about gender identity. It's about understanding how race, culture, and systemic barriers all intersect. If we're not paying attention to that, then we're only doing part of the work. In a school or workplace setting, this means we can't just create policies and assume all is well. We have to be intentional about whose voices are being heard, who feels safe, and who might still be left out. AJ Hikes pushes us to move beyond surface level inclusion and really look at equity in a deeper way. When we look at what real inclusion actually looks like in schools, Richland School District's Procedure 3211 stands out because it moves beyond just making statements and actually defines clear expectations for action. This policy is centered on supporting gender-inclusive environments, especially for non-binary and gender-expansive students. What stands out to me is that students don't have to go through a long process to be recognized. Staff are expected to respect students' chosen names and pronouns right away, which removes a major barrier and shows immediate respect for identity. The policy also makes it clear that students should have access to restrooms, locker rooms, and activities that align with who they are, while still offering privacy options without isolating them. Another important piece is the focus on student safety and confidentiality. Schools are expected to protect students' privacy and be thoughtful about how and when information is shared, which is huge for building trust. On top of that, staff training is required, which reinforces that inclusion isn't just optional, it's a responsibility. Overall, Procedure 3211 reflects what equitable practice should look like. It's proactive, it's structured, and it creates an environment where students don't have to fight to be seen. They're supported from the start. At the end of the day, this work is about more than policies or procedures. It's about people. As educators, the environments we create directly impacts how students see themselves and whether they feel like they truly belong. For non-binary students, something as simple as being recognized, respected, and included can make the difference between feeling invisible and feeling valued. When students feel safe and accepted, they are more likely to engage, take risks in their learning, and reach their full potential. This is why it's so important for us to move beyond awareness and into action. Inclusion is not just about avoiding harm, it's about actively creating spaces where every student can show up as their authentic self without fear. The reality is, students are already navigating these identities whether we feel prepared or not. So the question becomes, are we going to be a part of the barrier or a part of the support system? By being intentional in our practices, continuing to learn, and committing to equity, we have the opportunity to make a lasting impact not just academically, but in the lives of our students as a whole. For those of us who want to continue growing in our understanding and practice, it's important to engage with a variety of resources that not only build awareness, but also provide actionable strategies for supporting non-binary students. One of the most valuable starting points is GLISTEN, a national organization focused on creating safe and inclusive schools for LGBTQ+ students. The resources include educator guides, policy recommendations, and research such as the National School Climate Survey, which highlights the real experiences of students and can help inform more intentional classroom practices. Another important resource is the Trevor Project, which focuses on the mental health and well-being of LGBTQ+ youth. Their research and crisis support work highlight the direct connection between inclusive environments and student safety, reinforcing why this work matters beyond academics. For a more personal and reflective perspective, the book Gender Queer by Maya Kababe offers insight into the lived experience of navigating gender identity. Resources like this can help educators build empathy and better understand the impact of their classroom environment on student identity development. In addition, professional learning platforms such as Learning for Justice provide classroom-ready lesson plans, activities, and frameworks that help students integrate inclusion into daily instruction rather than treating it as a separate topic. Finally, for those who prefer visual and discussion-based learning, the TED Talk Understanding the Gender Spectrum by Sam Killerman offers a clear and engaging breakdown of gender identity that can be used for both personal growth and as a tool to spark conversations in educational settings. By engaging with a range of resources like these, educators can continue developing both the knowledge and confidence needed to move from awareness to intentional, consistent action in creating inclusive spaces for non-binary students. Thank you for spending your time with me. I truly hope that you were informed and inspired to get involved. Remember, every little bit helps. Onward.